From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris trade arguments in Michigan about the federal government's electric vehicle mandates, as the EV rules also become an issue in the close Senate contest between Republican Mike Rogers and Democrat Elissa Slotkin. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnist Alicia Finley, as well as Nick Tomeno, who works as a writer and editor on the op-ed pages and who's recently returned from a reporting trip to the great state of Michigan. As a reminder, Republicans need to pick up 2 Senate seats in November to ensure they control the chamber next year. They feel pretty confident about West Virginia and increasingly Montana. But the GOP is also trying to stretch for more to provide some padding on its majority, particularly since the map in 2026 is less favorable than it is this year. Notable thing about Michigan, unlike some of these other states where Republicans are trying to knock off incumbents, say Pennsylvania or Ohio, in Michigan there is no incumbent because Senator Debbie Stabenow did not seek re-election. So it is an open race. Nick, your write-up in this weekend's paper is under the headline, Mike Rogers tries a Michigan GOP comeback. And while I commend that to the attention of the listeners, maybe the place to start here today is tell us a bit about these 2 candidates and the case that each of them is making to the voters.
Sure. So I think you're right, Kyle. The first observation I'd make is that the Michigan Senate race for several weeks has really not been on the radar of Senate or otherwise election watchers. It's been neglected. The focus has more been on West Virginia and Montana. But suddenly in the last few weeks, Mike Rogers, I posit, is making something of a comeback. He is, in many respects, a really favorable candidate for these circumstances. Michigan's GOP had ascended to great heights in 2016. Donald Trump won the election by about 10,000 votes. And since then, it's fallen from grace. In 2018, the state party had a trifecta. It had the state house, Senate, and governorship. And by 2022, had lost all of it and granted the electoral votes to Joe Biden in 2020. So in many respects, people thought that Michigan wouldn't be successful in the Senate race. It hadn't won the seat since 1994. Mike Rogers is something of a throwback. He was a congressman from mid-Michigan between 2001 and 2015. That means that in some respects, he predated Trump. He is conceived of as being part of the establishment, but in many respects, he's making a pitch to be more aligned with the former president. So his case is effectively that Michigan, though it punished the GOP 4 years ago, has effectively inherited or lived with 4 years of progressive governance, of which Elissa Slotkin, his opponent, is a part and has contributed to.
And it's interesting that Rogers has been out of the House since 2015, because how is he handling the polarizing nature of Donald Trump and his third candidacy for the presidency? It's interesting. You talk to the authors of Detroit Free Press op-ed, where they're Republicans. They say they're voting for Kamala Harris, and they have split views on the Senate race. So how is Rogers handling that?
In one way, he's handling it by not being sycophantic. He campaigns with Trump on occasion on narrow, tailored issues. So he's campaigned with Trump at auto plants where they're talking explicitly about the electric vehicle mandate. Or he's campaigned with J.D. Vance up north at a plant or the future location of a plant where a Chinese battery company would occupy. And so he's picking his spots. He's not falling over his heels to win over the former president's praises. And just as a brief anecdote, when I was in the state, I couldn't actually get any sort of public encounter with Mike Rogers or with the Trump campaign. There were no events. So he's walking a fine line and really talking about discrete issues, not so much the image of the former president as being untouchable and unimpeachable.
What about Elissa Slotkin? Is she making an argument of moderation, that she is not the extremist that Republicans are making her out to be? And do you think that that jives with her overall record as an elected official?
So if you're familiar with Kamala Harris's pitch that she's from a middle-class family, if you're in Michigan, you'll be familiar with Elissa Slotkin's pitch that she worked under two presidents. She was was a CIA official under the Bush administration and then a Pentagon official in the Obama years. All of her ads have photos of her next to the two presidents. And that's exactly right. She's making a pitch of moderation. She's of the Democratic Party, but she stands up to it when it's needed. She, for instance, on COVID excesses, claims that she clawed back money. She, during a recent debate with Mike Rogers, said, if you are an illegal migrant in the States, I don't think you should be here. I think you should be removed back to your home country. Certainly not how Democrats presently talk. So she is making something of a defensive pitch. Also on electric vehicles, she says in a new campaign spot, I don't want to tell you to drive anything. I'm not banning anything. I live on a dirt road, she says, nowhere near a charging station. So in many respects, she's conceded that these are salient, potent issues. And as to the second question, is this consistent with her record? No, it doesn't appear to be. As ABC's 538 has reported, she's voted with President Biden 100% of the time since she's coincided with the president since 2020. And what's been to her benefit in some respects is she has had a short-lived political life. She came in to office in the wave year of 2018. In many respects, she could make the pitch of moderation contrasted with the excesses of Donald Trump. And so it worked twice more. But now that Michiganders have lived with excessively high prices, have lived with the reality that gas-powered cars are going to have to phase out, she is in something of a bind where the pitch doesn't match up with the record.
What about a place where Elissa Slotkin faces some internal Democratic Party cross-pressure, and that's a question surrounding Israel and the war in Gaza after the October 7 attacks on Israel? Notably, in the Democratic primary in Michigan in February, 13% of the ballots were cast for uncommitted, and that was seen as a protest against President Biden and his policies, his embrace of Israel. Michigan is home to a significant Arab American population. And Nick, how is Elissa Slotkin handling that? And do you have a sense that that is a potential problem for her, putting the coalition, the Democratic coalition, back together, if some of those voters are serious about not voting for Kamala Harris on this basis?
It's interesting. Mike Rogers has a problem in that he can't walk too closely to Donald Trump. Elissa Slotkin has a similar problem where she can't be that closely aligned with Kamala Harris and the Biden administration. So it's certainly a problem, I think, for her. Everyone I've talked with in the state suggested as much. Interestingly, though, it does seem, notwithstanding Elissa Slotkin's relatively full-throated endorsement of a robust foreign policy abroad, support of the Jewish state, she's not been as damaged as the administration has. The ire of Arab Americans and Muslims in Michigan seems to mostly be trained on the administration, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I spoke with the city council president of the city of Dearborn, which is an Arab majority city of around 107,000. And he says, quote, I can see many, a high percentage, a majority of constituents in the city of Dearborn, or even the greater Southeast area, that will not vote for Harris, end quote. But he also suggests that Elissa Slotkin has been very careful to, as he put it, lie low on the issue. So I do think that in a race that is more reminiscent of the 2016 environment than 2020, these votes matter, they add up, and the race will be won on the margin. But it does seem like she's insulated herself from the damage in a way that Kamala Harris has not.